A couple of months ago, my husband and I were on vacation, and prior to us checking into the house that we had rented, we got an email from the people who take care of the house, and it said, it was a warning, and it warned us to be careful about where we store food and about locking the doors because there were bear and mountain lions and all kinds of things that could get into the house. And we were literally on our way there when we got this email, and I immediately thought, where on earth are we going? That we have to make sure that the doors are locked because wild animals are going to use the door knobs to get into the place where we're staying. By the way, we were in mountains in California. But it struck me, and I thought about that this morning as I was reading over the verse that I want to share with us, because they weren't saying that it was gonna happen. They were just telling us that we had to take proper precautions to make sure that this house that was built in the middle of the wilderness was properly secured against dangers that were already there. The passage that we're gonna look at today comes from Genesis, very early in Genesis. It's in Genesis chapter 4, and I just wanna read one verse. And this verse is verse 7, and this is God talking. And he says, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. You see, God said this in response to Cain being mad. He was mad because Abel worked, he had flocks, and Cain worked the soil. And the Bible earlier on in chapter 4, it says that Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil to God as an offering. But Abel brought an offering of fat portions from the firstborn of his flock. And the reason why that's significant for those of you who maybe don't tend flocks, I don't. So it actually took some research for me to figure out, what does this even mean? When farmers or people who take care of animals have the beginning of the year where animals are starting to bear young, the first animals that are born are particularly important because they're special and it's exciting. But also, there's no promise that all the rest of the births and all the rest of the animals that you think are gonna come, because things could go wrong. There's all kinds of things. So the Bible talks a lot about giving first fruits, giving of the firstborn of a flock means that you're trusting that God is going to provide more later. And so when Abel brought the firstborn from his flocks, he was saying something to God. He was saying that he trusted him, but he was also honoring God with that. Whereas Scripture also tells us that Cain just brought some of what he had. There's nothing special about what he brought. He did the offering because he was supposed to. He checked the box, if you will. And God looked with favor on the offering that Abel gave because he saw Abel's heart and the fact that he carefully chose what he gave to God, whereas Cain just was checking a box. That verse that says, if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. That house that we stayed in, there were animals, wild animals, that lived right outside the door. And they were a danger to us. And we had to be careful that every time we came and went in and out of the house, that we locked the door. We had to take proper precautions to make sure that we were securing our dwelling, that we weren't being careless. Well, God is saying the same thing to Cain, and he's saying it to us too. Sin is crouching at the door. We don't choose when we're younger or at the beginning of any situation that we're going to go down a wrong path. Very few people do that. Instead, what happens is it's one step and another step and another step in a wrong direction. It's just one time of deciding that you're not going to do what's right, that you're going to choose to live carelessly, to not give God the honor that he is due. And then it becomes a little bit less caring about God and a little bit less. And suddenly that sin that's crouching at your door, that desires to have you, as God says, it takes over. But God says, you must rule over it. It's an everyday choice. I hope that this helps us to have a visual of what it takes. It's not a one and done thing. It's an everyday deciding to choose to do what is right in every conversation, in every decision. And God is right there to help us along the way.